And we are back. This is part two of the audiobook review or the book review of Anna, the grandmother of Jesus. And this is Truth and Wondless Discussions, of course, with Enlightened Living, obviously, right? Okay, anyways. Alright, so where were we? So yeah, I wanted to. Do you have a few things you want to say? Okay,
You wanted to bring up a couple of the things that we missed on the last one. Let's see, there was like the disciples at the Last Supper kind of a thing.
Oh yeah. So that's another. So yeah, this is gonna would be an interesting book for someone who has kind of like a hard set sort of in stone idea of what like the whole Jesus Christianity Bible thing is all about. It'd be sort of a very interesting perspective on things. But again, if you are more open minded, I guess, or more like you know not so set in stone on what your beliefs are, I guess, then it you can see the truth in it, I guess, is what I'm saying. But they bring up the whole Last Supper thing. You know how they have like the picture of Jesus around the table with the 12 disciples, but an interesting thing about that they kind of brought up in the book a lot was how the 12 disciples all of them had a female counterpart who was equally as important as the male counterpart, because the big thing about the what they were all about is in driving home like the importance of the balance and the divine masculine and feminine energies on this earth plane. And so each of the counterpart had to have an opposite gender counterpart to balance that. They go into more like they explain it a little bit better in the book, but it's something along those lines of so basically, and there were just 12 disciples. There was actually quite a bit more disciples, but all of them had, besides his grandmother Anna, I think, besides her, all of them had a counterpart of the opposite gender. So I thought that was important because that was like really an important thing of as far as like the balancing of the energies and like really what do you call it manifesting the full power of like in this earthly plane or realm. But anyway, that was cool. I mean, it was interesting. Um,
That's one of the things. Also, it's like it kind of gives people an idea and a perspective. That's like, hey, you know what? Males during that time were not the only people that could be initiated and enlightened. They do bring it up on the Masters of the East and in this book. So it's kind of something that allow people to see and understand. It's not just only men like it. They always try to portray through all
oh
things we've
yeah,
learned.
yeah. Women were like really powerful back in this time too, and they still are now. But like the energies shifted, and they've been shifting throughout the course of humanity. As if anyone saw our last video, how that energy, the power struggle shifts back and forth. Um, but yeah, so back then, yeah, the females went through a lot of initiations and were masters and teachers of these like secret schools of mystery and like um, uh, yeah, there's a lot of ladies who are in charge basically as well. But she did mention Anna, the narrator of the book, her bio, the one telling the story. She did mention that during the time that Jesus or Mary they were born, starting to grow up in their younger years, or around that time was the time when sort of not say the downfall of the the divine feminine, but that was kind of when the power structure started to shift a lot in society around them, where like the masculine energy or the males became more like dominant and suppressing like the female energy or people around them or whatever. This was kind of around the time when that started to happen. So that was it's like this is I feel like it's a historical masterpiece, okay, and it connected a lot of dots when it comes to like if you do a lot of the research and like initiation processes and symbolism and all that kind of stuff and secret schools and societies, it connects a lot of dots there. And that's another thing about symbolism. Yeah, they bring up the cross, how anyone who's into this kind of stuff probably already knows that yeah, the cross is actually a really sacred symbol. It's not meant to be a sign of like oh death and like crucifixion and we should all feel bad because someone died for our sins, that kind of thing. That's not what it's meant to be about, death and dying. That's not what this symbol it was distorted to mean that. They talk a lot about how that symbol, it's supposed to be like an ascension, like you're raising your consciousness to a point of I guess ascension or something, and like where like the cross kind of represents like the death of like maybe the ego or something, or the lower conscious self, so that you ascend or something like that. But anyway, and it's a very powerful symbol, but it's been distorted and then given to people, so they're carrying around this like distorted symbol where they're reminded of death and dying and
Yeah.
sadness. That's another way of basically you control like the masses, right? Or
You can take
the
symbols and
thinking,
rewrite when you take
powerful
the powerful
symbols.
symbols and rewrite their information that people
Yeah.
believe, and it starts to, distort it and helps manifest like a distorted reality.
Yes, yes. So that was interesting too. They talked a lot about that in the book, and um, yeah, I want to touch one another thing on the whole faking of the deaths and stuff, because like you know how people say like a lot of people that especially people in the public eye, they feel like I think they faked their death or whatever,
Mm.
like Elvis or like was Andy Kaufman, or like there's a lot of people that are like they're not really dead. They're gonna come back at some point. It's like they may well very people
Yeah,
know how to.
they might be out there right now, and like and there might be like your next door neighbor. You don't even know. Like he looks so familiar.
I'm just saying, yeah, it's possible. Yeah, these people obviously there's a history and there's a process behind the preservation of the body, or even like just faking the death or going into a state of like samadhi where you go into a very deep um, basically you can make your body appear to be dead pretty much, and then you can reanimate or go back in and raise the senses again or whatever of the body or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, this is the thing, okay? So yeah, people probably have been faking their deaths. Celebrities have been faking their death all this time, and they're all gonna come back and have a party.
Yeah.
A party like it's 1999, whatever.
What's interesting is that when you think about this for a moment. Um, Famous people, rich people, whatever, like that. Then all of a sudden, like they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get plastic surgery." They come back and they look like completely just like plastic or you're like weird and everything. Like you're like, I guess that could be them. I can't really tell anymore. But it's like, and then you look at some of these celebrities, they do it some of the times too. It's like, oh look, this celebrity looks just like her great great grandmother, like exactly the same. It's like, but then she had plastic surgery. Oh, she doesn't look anything like her grandmother anymore. It's like, oh, I wonder if they're trying to tell us that they've already been doing it.
You mean that they've been faking their deaths?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah. I totally think this now. Well, I thought it before, but yeah. So, whatever. This is a funny thing to kind of think about as far as
Yeah.
all this stuff. But, let's see. Anything else in this book? Yeah,
Let's see. What about some of the like her meeting her children and like knowing that they were gonna be disciples? Then she like
yeah, that was on the upper realms. So they in the upper realms, if anyone's familiar with, every time you obviously go to sleep at night, you go to the higher realms or you travel around. Your consciousness travels to different places. But and if you're a part of like the bringing back of like the positive energy to the planet or whatever, you more than likely your consciousness goes to the big group of place where everyone goes to plan out what's how you're gonna make this happen basically. um, and that's yeah, she would go to the upper realms basically, and they would plan out. And she said she met each and every one of her children that she was gonna have when she was like 400 or 500 years old. By the way, um, and how they were gonna play their parts in like setting the stage sort of for Jesus to be born, and all of that, how all that would play out. And so yeah, that was another really interesting thing about the book, how she talks about it, and then when Yeshua goes off and through the initiation process, he talks about how he traveled up with his father, I think, and then like some of his brothers or cousins or whatever. They would go to like the astral or like the upper realms too, and how they would you know meet other ascended masters, and like yeah, just the whole thing was really fascinating. I don't know. I
yeah
just keep saying it was fascinating. It was so fascinating.
yeah
But yeah. let me see. There was a couple of other things I want to touch on, but I'll hand it over for a minute. I think.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting when you think about like all the different styles and ways of kind of getting initiated, and because it didn't also his grandmother like help in the process of initiating Yeshua to be like who he was supposed to become.
Cause she was at that point she was a respected kind of like master of all of these like hidden hidden knowledge and the mystery school secret teachings or
Yeah,
secret society. She was like one of the so yeah, she helped him with his initiation. So, and of course, the process of initiation again is that was another pretty interesting thing. They talk about the roles of like the pyramids and Egypt's role in like initiating disciples into like higher consciousness. Um, the Nile, I think they was it the Nile River is set up to where the initiate goes to the south part of it and travels. There's I think pyramids. There's seven. I think seven for each chakra that's worked on until they move up to an initiation or move up in energy to the next one. They go. It's like a months long process basically, but they travel up the Nile River through this um, at each stop point where there's another energy center that's worked on and energy is released and they raise up in consciousness in each area. But and so they spoke about that, how Jesus and also Mary and like some other people, the group of them had went through this initiation process. But yeah, so another interesting thing is how they bring up the use of the pyramids and through or I guess in this whole initiation thing, right?
that is pretty interesting. Especially it's like when you they've already done research and been finding out also that these pyramids um, they all line up in different like star formations, which is interesting because it's like they're like, oh, it's like they're all at the exact same time, but they realize like each set is in a different time, like spring, winter, fall, like there. So it's like you could see how that would be the initiation like route, because like they're each one's different. It's not like okay, this day at this time like this, they're all lined up perfectly. It's like no, one is lined up at one
Well,
point.
no, so yeah, they were all
Yeah.
set up specifically for a specific purpose. So
Mm.
they weren't just kind of randomly put up. And I think they even talk about the Sphinx and everything. They go into a lot of detail about the use of the pyramids and why they were put up in the locations and how important they were. Um, so for all those people, there's been a lot in at least our time frame in history where people are like, "What the heck were the pyramids for?
Yeah.
How did they build the pyramids? What are these for?" And it's all kind of explained pretty well in like these older texts or books. Um, I just think that's kind of funny, but
Yeah.
she also brings up in this book too. I can't remember which other. I think it was the book called Initiation by Elizabeth H, where she talks about how the pyramids were built and even a little bit about what they were used for. And in this book, they talk about it as well. And she mentions too how they built the pyramids using energy, sound energy to put the blocks together, um, sound vibrations to move the blocks and put them
Mm-hmm.
together and whatnot. So yeah, it's just like so yeah, there's the mystery, everyone.
Yeah.
Mystery over, right? No, yeah, um, people. There's another interesting book to read, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something else. Hold on. Let me think for a minute. Let me look at my notes.
Um, so it's when you think about like all the stuff that's like we've been discussing in these different books and whatnot, it's like this kind of like allows people to see more information, a different perspective, and kind of like it might actually like kind of like change something inside of you. It might actually speak to you, it might not. But the overall, like we're showing you guys different ways to kind of awaken yourself and learn more information about like what is out there, and not just like take what is always just handed to you and be like, okay, this must be the truth. Like this is giving like insight onto a lot of different perspectives, and it is a lot more truthful than what you've been fed. So it's like we're trying to get out there with this information and allow people to have the opportunity to see more than they've already been seeing.
Yeah, definitely a highly recommended book to read. to broaden your perspective and your understanding of your different possibilities that you have as a being of consciousness living in this physical realm, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and that everyone that's here is always here, and we're always in a, the only thing that changes is like the state of form that we're in pretty much, but the consciousness is always present. But yeah, I think yeah, because we talked about ascension and how when you raise your consciousness, and I think that's another thing that's interesting. So we talk about this global ascension is going on right now, right? Well, and that was sort of the beginning, sort of the time frame of to start. They were setting things in place with the whole crucifixion and all that stuff to for now also, by the way. Um, so this was like the beginning of like setting things in place for the ascension of planetary ascension for now.
Mm.
So then they bring those together. And when you listen to the book, you kind of see how everything ties together basically. But yeah, and they talk about ascension of the consciousness of the human being. Okay, so this is where you raise your consciousness so that your higher conscious self can merge with your consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened with Anna or Hannah in the book, and this is kind of what's happening collectively on the planet right now, and everyone individually. But this is like sort of the idea behind like raising up your consciousness, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the thing that's happening right now. Okay, the Great Awakening that's going on right now. That's what I'm trying to get at, and so we talk about how you have to preparing the body so it can actually withstand these higher frequencies, because your higher consciousness is from a realm that's a higher frequency than this earth realm right now, right? And so if you bring something of high frequency down into a vessel that can't handle it, you may harm the vessel, right? And so what's also happening is that your people's bodies are slowly changing right now, and you can obviously do more things to help like raise the what is it, the receptor ability of your body. I don't
Mm.
know what do you call it, but raising the energy of your body to where you can hold,
Accept this.
so you can accept like a higher frequency
Give you
into
like
it.
a more energy capacity to accept and hold this.
Yeah, and they talk about this more also in the book, the initiation book. They talk about how trying to when you bring they talk. I don't think I talked about this in the review of the book, but they mention like the different layers of consciousness here in the physical realm. They say that there's matter, plant, animal, human, I think, and then there's the enlightened human, and then like there's another one. I think it's like a God consciousness. I think maybe is the next one. But if you watch that book or read it or whatever, you'll hear it. But so they talk about those different layers of consciousness, and so you can go backwards. Wait, you can go forward in consciousness. So you can go from like plant to animal, is like I wouldn't say not like the natural direction, but kind of is sort of the natural. Like a human at your lower conscious level, you can raise up in consciousness, right, to
Mm-hmm.
God consciousness, to an awakened human, and to like God consciousness, right? Those are, I guess, the 7 layers. Um, but if you go backwards, so if you bring God consciousness down to the level of the human consciousness, you have to that level of energy can damage the vessel that it's going into. So basically, if I try to put my consciousness into a rock, I could blow the rock up pretty much,
Mm.
right? The level of energy um, can damage the vessel. So either you have to break away your consciousness, so dilute it down to be able to go into a lower conscious being, so you don't harm that vessel that it's in, or you have to, if you're going to be merging consciousness with like a lower being or something, or you have to, um, the vessel has to raise up its energy to a point where it can handle the frequency of a higher consciousness. Does that make any sense, or did I just
Yeah,
like talk in a bunch of circles? I can't tell.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, that was talked a lot about in the book, the Initiation book by Elizabeth H, whatever her name is, H, um, and it's talked a little bit about in this one. That's where some more correlation comes in, I guess. And that's an interesting subject in general. The whole like how consciousness works through the different levels of consciousness, and how it can work through or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yes, you raise your consciousness, yes, everyone. But also like that's why I guess it's important. We've done a few videos on like preparing the body or making the body as healthy as it can be, raising the I guess the energy or the stability or I don't know the strength of the body, strengthening the body, the nervous system. That's another big thing they bring up in the other book, but not this. I'm like confusing everyone now, aren't I? And I actually learned this when I was in India too. How you strengthen the nervous system is very, because that's where the energy comes down into the main portal of it, I guess, through the like the nervous system. So you have to really strengthen, raise the frequency, I guess, of the nervous system so it can handle like higher frequency energy. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see how that would work. It's like, especially it's like if you think about like people's nervous system kind of being like the wiring, and then you think of like an old school toy that has a voice, right? It's like distorted. It's like, hello, my name is. But then you like the newer toys have copper wiring, or like then you have like gold wiring where it's like almost like pristine and it comes through very clearly and it like goes through the whole system. So if you ever think of like your body as being wiring, you have to upgrade your,
Upgrade the
your
wires,
wires,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you can actually accept and like actually transfer the energy without
So
it just
yeah,
like
and I'm just trying to like,
blowing you up.
yeah, just trying to bring it to like a useful thing that people can think about right now
Yeah.
is that like literally what they talk about in this book, Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, is a lot of things they talk about are very relevant to what's happening right now and on the planet, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ascension, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we're going through, everyone. Come on. And they also mentioned too that yeah, back then in the olden days, you went through initiation by going through spending months and years and whatnot. Some people spent months and even like years or longer learning these processes, but nowadays it's different, and it is different. And I guess you got to figure that out for yourself how it's different.
Yeah. As the world is waking up, it becomes like that information in that way is becoming easier and better. So
Yeah.
that's good for us, right? Take
Well,
advantage of it.
yeah, it's all for the experience.
Yeah.
Again, bring it all back to it's all about experience. It's all about the I don't want to say the game, but the what else? What's another word for the game?
I don't know, the process or something. I
The
don't know.
process, the experience, the
Many things.
yeah. Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add on or finish up with?
Oh, I guess that's it. Again, yeah, if you can find the book, try to find it and read it or look through it or something because it is really interesting and hopefully people get some things out of it. And again, turn off your TVs, everyone. Just kidding.
Yeah. Don't
Some
pay attention to the news and the media.
at the moment it may not be the best thing. I don't know. It depends on who you are, I guess.
Yeah.
Some
That's
helpful
the
hints
experience,
to
right?
some helpful hints to get through the next month or so for everyone. Keep your TVs turned off. Stop playing on the internet so much. Go play in your garden or do something else you like doing for fun. um, was it fear? Yeah, don't give in to fear because I think that's another thing they're trying to blow up right now. The whole fear thing. Who knows? I don't know. I don't even watch what's going on right now, and you shouldn't either. But anyway, yeah. So
It's good information.
yeah,
Check it out. Share it. Or not. It's up to you.
cool beans. All right.